Who was your saddest celebrity encounter? Went and saw Steve-O do his stand-up tour. After his show, he said he would meet everybody there. We waited in line. And he was being super nice. Laughing and taking pictures with everyone. Right before we got to the stage, some fat redneck arsehole told him that he was funnier back when he was on drugs. It killed his whole vibe. When we got to him, he just took a picture with us and said thanks for coming. But he was clearly in a bad mood. I don't blame him at all. He was still extremely nice. But he was clearly irritated. It was cool that he still met us and took a picture with us though. Seemed like a really cool dude. How could you be such an insensitive asshole to even think of saying that? The guy has done well to get himself back on the straight and narrow and was even nice enough to wait for everybody and have a chat with all his fans, which I heard he does on a regular basis, just for some fat prick to grill him for not being on drugs anymore. The sad thing is it wouldn't surprise me if that's not the first time he's heard it. A few years back, Robin Williams was having breakfast at my cafe, and was sitting next to a little girl who clearly recognized his voice but had no idea who he was and was too shy to make eye contact with a stranger. So Robin pulled his sleeve down over his hand to make a puppet and talked to her with a silly voice through it. The only sad part is thinking back on how sweet that was. Edit. Oh my gosh, the best part of this thread is that so many people have amazing stories of their own about him to share. Thank you. Reddit. Deleted. I once knew someone who worked on costumes on The Mummy. She had nothing nice to say about Rachel Weisz either. Said Rachel walked past her one morning whilst she was organizing the costumes. They made eye contact, so my friend said good morning, as polite people do. Apparently Rachel just scowled at her as if she shouldn't be allowed to talk to her. I don't know how you can work with people like that. It's not even like she was a runner or assistant. She helped design the costumes and had worked on other big films. And had never been treated like that by one of the stars before. Deleted. I met Georgia R. Martin at the Blaze Pizza in Evanston a couple of months back when he was in town to accept an award from Northwestern University. At the time, I was listening to the audiobook of A Clash of Kings. And he very excitedly told me, "You've got a ways to go to catch up." When I told him that I've already read what he's published 3 times. And I'm listening to the audiobook as a new way to experience the story. He just kind of deflated. He let out a big sigh. And just said, "Yep. I need to finish the next book. People won't stop bothering me about it." Poor GRRM. I know people have plenty of reasons to be frustrated with him for not having Winds finished yet. But people seem to act like it's easy to write these books and the only reason it's not done yet is because he procrastinates. Some people are so rude about it too. GRRM is obviously upset he's taking so long to finish, and I wish people would be more positive instead of bashing him about it. I went to school with someone who wasn't a celebrity at the time who had celebrity parents. She had your typical teenage celebrity crush on an actor. Her mom started dating him and she got upset and shaved her head. I knew some kids whose parents were A-list actors as well. They were together for a while as far as celebrity marriages go. But then when they broke up, the dad started dating supermodels and then Scarlett Johansson. Their oldest daughter, I was more friends with the son. Didn't know her, was almost Scarlett's age by then. Can't imagine how that felt. Though I actually think she is hotter than Scarlett. DMX very graciously held a door open for me recently. It was a nice encounter until I saw in the news the next day that he had been found unconscious in the parking lot later that evening. Yeah, DMX has been in a bit of a tailspin for a while now. Really sad. Dude was such a great and talented rapper and made some classics. Met Vince Vaughn in a bar in Hollywood. He was with his entourage or whatever. And had quite a few drinks. He hit on a girl friend of mine. And I was amazed to see her totally blow him off. Not that she should have gone for it. But it was pretty incredible to see a multimillionaire movie star get rejected by an accountant. Edit. I used the term blow him off as it is used in the U.S. Which means to reject someone's advances without giving it a second thought. So, yes. She rejected VV, and knew full well who he was and all that. Should probably add that she wasn't exactly the most selective person when it comes to hooking up with guys. No judgment here, but that just made the whole thing even more amusing. Accountants have a sixth sense about people who are irresponsible with money. Well, I once wanted to get Daryl Hannah's autograph for my friend who had been crushing on her since forever. I couldn't summon up my courage to approach her directly. So I just asked the dude sitting next to her. He put me off very politely. I went back to my friends empty-handed and was complimentary of Mr. Nobody's manners. They told me I just asked JFK Jr. for Daryl's autograph. Edit. I seem to have confused some folks for playing fast and loose with the meaning of sad. I meant that the encounter made me out to be pretty lame. Lame for being too intimidated to just be direct and ask her. And for being so dopey I didn't even realize that the person I had the guts to ask was, in his own way, just as famous. Becomes even sadder in retrospect. Met Samuel L. Jackson at a celebrity golf pro-am. Shook his hand after I found his ball in the rough and asked him to sign my wallet, the one that says bad motherfucker I'd bought off eBay since I love Pulp Fiction so much. Had the marker and all. He just said no chance. That feeling of disappointment will be forever with me. Edit. Come to think of it. The same day he was sitting on one of the tee boxes waiting to tee off. A little girl ran under the spectator rope. He saw her coming from say 40 yards away. Raised his hand and pointed at her, and security ran over and removed her back to her parents. This is very disappointing. Of all the autographs, you think he'd be most happy to sign this one. My brother met Gene Simmons backstage at a show he was playing in. Gene complimented my brother highly on his guitar playing but then said too bad you'll never make it and just walked away. Met Craig Ferguson in a green room. It wasn't sad. He was really friendly. But was talking with a mouthful of turkey the whole time. I couldn't understand a damn thing. Craig Ferguson was talking with a mouthful of turkey the whole time. No. He's just Scottish. It's an easy mistake to make. I saw Nicolas Cage at a restaurant when I was 7. I tried to take a picture of him discreetly and the flash went off. He and his posse immediately got up and left. My dad works with the UN and spent a couple of days in Africa with him. At the end of his stay with my dad and other UN folk, he said he wanted to take something from the office, remember his time with them. At the office they had a big bag of neckties that everyone in the office sort of shared. My dad suggested that he take one. Apparently this turned into a 10-minute ordeal of Nick Cage picking out his favorite tie. He eventually decided on a red and black one. My dad was amused by this as they're the colors of his favorite sporting team. My dad asked him why he decided on the red and black tie and Nicolas Cage stared at him for 5 seconds and then shouted because they're the colors of war. Man. TLDR. Nick Cage is a bit weird. My mom found Paris Hilton incognito in an airport. Came to find me. Brought me to a tiny lady in a hoodie and big sunglasses in the middle of the airport. Goes, hi, are you Paris Hilton? Then pushed me in front of her and said, here. Say hi to my son like I was a weird birthday gift or something. She said sup. I said sup, then she did this weird little laugh. Then my mom goes okay bye. That was my sad and awkward meeting with Paris Hilton in an airport. Shit. At least she said sup. LOL. Seeing a movie in Ottawa with my mother as a child. And Tom Green was behind us all alone. Looking grayish. My mom told me not to bother him because Drew Barrymore had just dumped him. Good advice. He said in a WTF interview recently that people still ask him about Drew Barrymore on the street nearly every day of his life. That must suck. People are stupid. I was at a cheese shop in the West Village. I realize how douchey this sounds, when I noticed James Spader was at the counter. I was in the middle of a massive Boston legal binge at the time and absolutely adored his work. So I went to the counter and started looking at the cheese. This is casual. It's a cheese shop for fuck's sake. He was sampling cheeses and I just looked at this man whose work I so admired and respected and said, how's the Gouda? Apparently it's delicious. Stupid. Stupid. Edit. Put wrong neighborhood. Man, that's legit. I feel like most celebrities just want to be treated like normal people. It would have been ace if you had had a 10-minute conversation about the cheeses and then towards the end you slip in a casual comment about his work. A comment that says I know who you are and I'm a fan. But I didn't make it weird. I think most celebs would appreciate that. Except Rachel Weisz apparently. A buddy of mine was a student at the University of Michigan while Michael Phelps was training there under Bob Bowman. He and a few friends were walking outside the natatorium and ran into Phelps, who was eating a granola bar while heading into practice. They were pretty awestruck, and headed over in hopes of a photo or potential blumpkin. Phelps quickly finished his granola bar in order to shake my buddy's hand. As they were shaking hands he transferred the wrapper to my buddy, leaned in, whispered "You can keep that," and promptly walked off. Honestly, that would make me laugh and I'd feel like that's about what I deserved for interrupting a dude's snack. I got cock-blocked by Brad Pitt. I was an extra in World War Z and I met this girl there and we were talking and all was great until one time Brad Pitt walks by. Was very friendly to her. Totally blanked me. His stunt double was a cool dude though. Were you a zombie? That'd be sweet. I had an entirely eyeball body language conversation with Chris Pontius in a guitar center. He was playing an acoustic. I saw him. He looked at me. I realized who he was. He saw that I recognized him and he gave me a look that was so sad. Like, "Please don't announce to the world that I'm here." I nodded and he smiled and looked relieved. The end. I saw Michael Cera board the L at Williamsburg headed to Manhattan. He was dressed just like he did in Superbad and Juno. Juno had just released. We had an eye conversation. No words exchanged. But he was terrified I was going to speak up or ask for an autograph. I just raised an eyebrow, smiled at him, and chuckled about it to myself for the remaining 20-minute ride. He kept nervously looking back over his shoulder at me. When he got to his stop he paused and nodded at me in thanks. Almost certain he remembers this. I met Hulk Hogan when I was 4, late-ish 80s, at some wrestling thing in Dallas. All I remember is that my dad got his attention as he was walking toward the ring. And when he came around he stuck out this giant hand and said "Put it there." Darling, I recognized him but he was scary. So I peed my pants and cried. I guess it's obvious now that he wanted a handshake or a high five or something? No idea. Anyway. Scared the piss out of me. Dude is huge. Deleted. Richard Kiel aka Jaws from the 007 films. It was a shock to see how deteriorated he looked. Riding a scooter because his legs were done. Hands shaking. Half blind. Still signed every DVD and posed for every photo. Passed away 2 weeks after that. I also pissed off Joe Edgerton because he didn't like my question. But that's more funny than sad. Quite a few of the guys I work with on events all knew him quite well. He literally kept working until the day he died because it made him happy. So yeah. While it's quite sad to see someone like that, he would have been a big part of why he never wanted to stop. And I think that's quite a nice thing. I saw Stephen King while getting some food in Exeter, NH once. I didn't walk up to him and saw anything. But I saw 2 or 3 people following him trying to get him to talk to them. Which looked annoying to deal with. Poor guy. He has a house on Casey Key in FL. He used to stop in a Barnes & Noble near our campus when he was in town. One day I was digging through the discount bins and Stephen King walked up and started digging through the bin next to me. I just kind of continued shuffling through the books until he walked off. He apparently would also sign a bunch of his books and put them back on the shelf without telling anyone. Edit. You status Gonistat has pointed out the house is on Casey Key. Not Siesta. Florida's full of keys. Whoa man. I don't know if anyone outside the UK will know who this is. But I performed at a festival where one of my childhood heroes, Craig Charles, was Jing. I was a massive Red Dwarf fan so I was so excited to meet him. Seeing him backstage. He was just this middle-aged guy in sunglasses and a leather jacket trying to hang out with all these young cool bands who didn't know who he was. That was kind of sad. Saw his jazz band perform in Bristol a couple of years back. He was so fucked up he attacked a poster of himself. Then a bouncer. Was a weird night. A shit-faced Andy Dick tried to molest my male friend on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. So that was more disturbing than sad. I once ran into Andy Dick at a storage facility in Hollywood. He was wandering around with a giant pair of bolt cutters. I was scared. I met a local celebrity I grew up watching on local television. Forgot his name. But he was a cowboy and hosted a kids show in my city. Anyway. Around 12. I was at an event he was hosting and he was giving out prizes from the stage for kids with certain birthdays and I won. I was so excited to see him. I remember going up to the stage to get my prize and as he handed it to me I said something like, "Wow, it's so nice to meet you. I grew up watching you," and he cut me off. "Yeah, thanks kid." Took me by the shoulder and turned me around to exit the stage. Real bummed. Totally was buckshot. That was a by Grabthar's hammer. What a savings moment. I work for an airline. So I see some celebs from time to time. One time Tom Cruise cussed me out because I wouldn't violate federal law and bring his checked bags to him plainside. Made him go to baggage claim like everyone else. Edit, because this got so much attention I thought I might explain a bit more. He was coming off the plane and was told to pick his bag up plainside. For whatever reason there was no plainside tag marking his bag as such. I explained to him the whole deal with it. He turned red, frowned and stormed off, mumbling curses under his breath. Trying to explain his bag would make it there before he did, and the way my airport is shaped, he had to go right by the carousel anyways. I was at a music festival, and some guys were passing out some wristbands promoting some music charity. And they said that The Weeknd was there at the festival. He wasn't performing. He was just there, and was going to be signing autographs. I'm not a huge Weeknd fan, but I thought it would be cool to meet him. So I started searching and I found him. But I stood there like 3 feet away trying to Google a picture of him just to make sure. I didn't want to just walk up to a black guy with some resemblance of The Weeknd and ask if he was The Weeknd. Once I confirmed that it was indeed him, he was gone. Also, The Weeknd now seems like a silly name after typing it so much. Who else could possibly have hair like that? Aziz Ansari hit on me years ago and I was too starstruck to remember how to talk. Removed. I had waited an hour and a half in line for a ride at Great Adventure. Was in the front seat line so the wait was even longer. Finally, I was next in line, watched gleefully as my train pulled in. And Chris Rock and his family come walking up from the exit and are given my spot. Without waiting at all. I was both sad and mad and have held a grudge against him ever since. I sat next to Kevin Spacey on the tube when I was in London with my dad. My dad was so pumped that he was next to Kevin Spacey. He's a huge fan. But he didn't want to ask him for a picture while we were on a crowded train, so he just let him be. He was just happy to have seen him. Then this guy randomly shouts from the other side of the train, "Hey Kevin. How's the acting going?" And everyone's faces turned to him. Felt so bad for Kevin Spacey. No one would take their eyes off him and everyone was taking photos and whatnot. Just felt sorry for the guy. He looked like he had just come back from a run or something and wasn't wanting to be recognized. Can't imagine living my life constantly trying to avoid being recognized. He'd probably just come back from pushing some poor girl in front of a train. You do not have permission to reuse this content for your top 10s clickbaity bullshit. Fuck off. I'd love to think this is one of those moments that stuck with Mr. Schwarzenegger. And now he finally has closure. Nichelle Nichols. Met her at a con literally a matter of hours after Leonard Nimoy passed away last year. You could tell she wasn't all there in her panel. Because her answers to any question would quickly turn into ramblings about her ventures in high school and her early singing career. I'm not sure if it was her age, the grief, or some combination of both. But it was really depressing. Edit, since some people are wondering. Yes. It was Pensacon 2015. Deleted. 1993. The Wetlands Bar, Hippie Central, in NYC. River Phoenix's band was playing. And he was clearly tripping balls. Sample between song banter, smooches crappy woolen hat around on his head silently for 30 seconds. Then. This is called a Lou hat. It's called that. Because Lou makes them. Okay. Show thankfully ends. He wanders off stage and is standing by me. Vaguely looking off into the distance. Me, Jesus. Man. How many hits are you on? Him, hits? What's that? Me, acid. Dude. I'm impressed you were able to play at all. Him, or, no. Man. I don't do drugs. Few months later. He's dead on a sidewalk from a speedball overdose. He wanders off stage and is standing by me. Nice reference. After Katrina. My now wife and her then boyfriend were in Whole Foods in New Orleans. Shopping. There was a guy there who looked like Lawrence Fishburne. And the boyfriend turns my wife and says, loudly, "Damn, Lawrence Fishburne got fat." The man turns around slowly and just stands there. Looking at them. Forlorn. It was Lawrence Fishburne. That was an equally arsehole thing to do if that was Lawrence Fishburne or not Lawrence Fishburne. Met Tiger Woods on a commercial shoot back 2010. Such a pretentious douche. That and his entourage of smarmy orange fluffers telling him how great his shots were. It made sad knowing how alone he really was. What are smarmy orange fluffers? I love it. I was in the seafood section of a massive Tesco. And the fat chuckle brother asked me to hand him some cod fillets. I did. He looked at the price, exhaled and put it back down, shaking his head. It was not an expensive piece of fish. Are you telling me that a fucking chuckle brother asked you to pass something to him? And you did it without saying to you? What is the fucking world coming to? Deleted. I was on vacation with the family in Hawaii when I was little. While in the pool, I see Pauly Shore walking through knee-deep water with nothing but a red Speedo on and visibly hammered. He is carrying some Hawaiian girl in his arms. He walks right past me and I state, "Hey, you're Pauly Shore." My first celebrity encounter. I was young. He looks at me with drunk googly eyes and says, "I am?" Oh yeah. Whatever. Man. That's the best way I can picture an encounter with him going. I met Ryan Jarman from the Cribs in a club in Wakefield, his hometown, a couple of years ago. He looked completely worn out and honestly looked like a junkie. I said, "You're Ryan from the Cribs?" He looked down and said, "Yep, I used to be in the Cribs. I still am, I think." Then he finished his drink and walked away down the road. I just felt sorry for him. He may have just been having a bad day, but he came across as a deeply unhappy person. I went to a party once that Bill Maher threw. It was the saddest collection of D-list celebs I've ever seen. Notables were Gary Busey, Larry Flint and the man I ended up tossing the football with, Kato Kalin. Highlight, smoked a joint under a balcony with Kid from Kid and Play and Coolio. Smoking a joint with Coolio is a bucket list item. Deleted. Mark Wahlberg told me I was too pretty to be smoking cigarettes on my birthday a few years ago. Humble brag. That's not sad. He was complimenting you in his Mark Wahlberg way. I bet he even told you to say hi to your mother for him. I once saw Frank Carson, https://en. Wikipedia. Org wiki Frank Carson, on the car deck of a ferry from Ireland to the UK as we were docking in Liverpool. I merely glanced past him as I was getting into my car. Thought to myself, that looks like that comedian who used to be on the TV, and thought no more of it. He seemed to think that my proximity meant I was a fan and was desperate to hear his catchphrase. So he winked at me and shouted, "It's the way I tell them," as I shut the car door. I felt sorry for him and so I grinned and gave him the thumbs up. Maybe I made his day. RIP. Edit. Apparently today is the 4th anniversary of his death. I had no idea. Sorry. Frank. Deleted 0. 5084. What is this? https:// pastabin. FCRFS 94K/93623. I worked at a pizza place in Santa Monica and answered the phone to a voice that sounded oddly familiar. I put in his number and lo and behold, it was Don Cheadle. The notes of his account read something like this. "Yes, it's Don Cheadle the actor. Bad tipper." I took his order and he was quite friendly. At one point he had ordered like 5 pizzas and was like, "Wait, how many pizzas do I have? 5? I must be crazy." Okay. Forget those last 2. I asked the driver when he came back what his tip was like on the $50 plus order. Terrible. Guy's famous actor has a big house here and he tips me like he's poor. Even though he was friendly on the phone. I can't fathom why he couldn't pop out a few more bucks and not get a reputation as a rich cheapskate. Hung out with Dave Mirra during a crazy freaking bike tour at Kona. We chatted for a good 30 minutes and he gave me pointers and just genuinely was someone to look up to. He killed himself the 4th of February of this year. Yep, it's really sad. He was really inspirational. Had a great life. A young family. Was an amazing athlete, not just on a bike. Depression is fucking horrible. Not me, but my friend's sister-in-law saw Jack Black walking down the street and eventually they crossed paths, and her, not wanting to pass up the chance at meeting him, approached him. She said something like, "Is it really you?" And he said yes. Then she said, "This is so weird. It's really you." And he said, "It's not weird for me." Then he asked her where she was going and she said she was going to the weed dispensary. Thinking he might find it funny, but he turned a bit sullen and said he was going to visit his mom in the hospital. She said she wouldn't bother him for a picture and he thanked her and left. I walked past Philip Seymour Hoffman in Chelsea in NYC at 4 a.m. a few years back. And he looked fat. Miserable and sad. RIP. Deleted. Lost Prophets were the first band my sister really liked and Ian Watkins used to message my sister on Facebook. I remember thinking what a cool guy. Messaging his 12-year-old fans, but then the news came out and turned that memory sour. Why would that be a bad memory? Searches Wikipedia. Oh okay. I met Cliff Richard once. That's the entirety of the story and I find it incredibly sad. Did he bum you? Deleted. Frankie Muniz was a friend of my stepsister's and he came over my dad's old house. I was like 10 or 11 and I knew him from Malcolm in the Middle and tried to act cool by just playing on my computer in the other room. I didn't even go up to introduce myself. Hahaha. For a short time. I lived in the same apartment complex as Frankie Muniz. It was one of those places in LA where actors live short term hoping they make it big. Anyway. One night. I was drunk as shit. Headed back to my place. Now. I'm not a small guy and I walk briskly. I turn a corner and almost completely deck Frankie. I mean. I hit him hard. And I must have looked totally insane. Because he was proper terrified. I steady him and I'm like holy shit it's Malcolm. He hurried away while I laughed. Jamie Lynn Spears, little sister to Brittany and star of Zoe 101 drunkenly waved a knife in my face while her friends fought and made a huge mess at my work. I'll post the video when I find it. Edit. Here's the video guys. http://m/tmz. com video/0e6gxj573. Credits to UI. I met Gilbert Gottfried at a convention. And there was nobody in his line. So we walked right up. He was very nice and soft-spoken. And I think we made his day. He was fairly close to becoming a huge star for a while. And now I bet most of those convention goers don't know anything about him. Gilbert is great. He's a rarity in that. While the public thinks he's a bit cheesy and a hack, he's very loved by other comedians. 99% of the time. It's the other way around. I was on Jeopardy a few years ago. And was pretty disappointed to learn that the only time you see Alex Trebek is while you're on stage taping the show. He's just very dry and straightforward, not rude. But extremely businesslike. Counter to this. I was on Wheel of Fortune years ago. Before taping. They take you backstage and walk you through the game. Vanna came out before she went into makeup. She looked like she just came from the gym and gave the contestants a quick hello. I came in first as an alternate and second as a contestant. And both times she did it. She was very polite and kind. Which was awesome, and when we were on stage, Pat was very kind, gracious, and supportive. He knew most of the people that were nervous and tried to be a comforting voice. I really had a great experience there. Probably the time I interrupted Bobby Flay proposing to his current girlfriend at the time, Stephanie March. They're getting a divorce, so I guess the damage I did finally took its toll. I met Jean Goodall at my university and she had become so tiny and little old lady like that I realized the world doesn't have that much time left with her. And upon hugging her I burst into tears. I saw Bob Saget at the Holocaust Museum. He was crying. I saw Bob Saget at Jazz Kitchen in downtown Disney. He was also crying. Mine was kinda a lack of the encounter. The first day I called off work. I didn't even call off my whole shift. I called off like 2 hours. In those 2 hours LeBron James and J.R. Smith came by. By the time I got to work we were flooded with people and LeBron wasn't even there anymore. I just had to clean up the mess that followed. I met Mr. Blobby once. Terrified me for life. I went from a 3-year-old who absolutely adored him to meeting him in a shop and being scared of him forever. Otherwise. Working for events. I meet quite a few celebrities. But none of them have been sad. But I think it helps that I work in charity and therefore, even if something personal is going on, they have to put smiles on their faces for everyone. However, I do find it quite sad that Dave Prowse says he can't remember anything from Star Wars to avoid answering questions about it. But then answers every question we ask him about it. Clearly faking it. If you ask me, lovely chap to have over for dinner though. Why the fuck did they think Mr. Blobby would be kid friendly? That shit's nightmare fuel. Probably when I met Sarah Jessica Parker and Matthew Broderick. I go to the grocery store late at night and get in the checkout line and see them. We were the only people in the store. They were arguing about something. So I didn't say hi and just awkwardly stared instead. After Gilda Radner died, I got to shake hands with Gene Wilder at Tower Records. He was in the Mahler section. Kyle Dunnigan, comedian, writer on The Amy Schumer Show, has a story about meeting Gene Wilder. He tried to ask Gene for an autograph, but he ignored him and kept walking. Kyle later found out that Gilda Radner had just died. This is more embarrassing for me. 4 a.m. in an airport, I ran into Adam Savage. Strike 1, don't talk to anyone in an airport at 4 a.m. They're just as delirious and tired as you are. Strike 2, don't fuck up and say his co-host's name when you try to say hi. Bonus. He tweeted about 5 minutes later complaining about idiots in airports trying to say hi by calling him Jamie. Learn from my mistake. https://twitter.com Dontrithus status /27,093,855,937 Whoa. Met Ben Stein in Florida when I was 6. Asked him for his autograph. He told me and my brother to leave him alone. He's a funny character actor. But really the guy is a giant turd. Little late to the party, but Michael J. Fox has a house where I live and I was putting a grill together for him and he was leaning against his car talking to me and he was just all over the place. Being an 80s baby, he was one of the biggest actors for me growing up and it was hard seeing him like that. Parkinson's is a hell of a disease. Deleted. Loose meat. This is seriously the most unappetizing name for a dish that I've ever heard, and that includes spotted dick. Sid Caesar. Groundbreaker of comedy. Your show of shows. Incredibly talented and funny man. And I'm a fan of comedy to begin with. On the one hand, I was really excited to see him. On the other hand, it was at the Vietnam War Memorial in Washington, D.C. and he was crying terribly while a small group of elderly women were crowded around him. It broke my heart to see him so upset and for these women to not give a shit. The teenage hero in me told them all off and demanded they give this man the quiet and respect he needs. But the real me just kind of made a mental note and filed it away for 30 plus years. My dad ran into Alan Jackson after a concert. Except this is back when he was not very well known. My dad told him he would go far if he kept it up. He now likes to think he is the reason Alan Jackson is where he is now. Worked for a cell phone carrier call center a while back. Cancelled Heath Ledger's cell phone post-mortem. Best, in 2002 I won a radio contest to see John Mayer play in NYC. Since I am an artist, I made a painting of him in the hopes I might get him to sign it. After the small show, people line up to take pics with him. When I get up to him, he is genuinely nice and immediately starts signing it when his manager comes over and says no autographs. Just pictures, and John goes, "Dude, she fucking painted shit," and he finished signing it. I met the oldest son from Home Improvement in a bar. He went on for over an hour about how hard his life was now that he wasn't in the show and JTT had all the success. He then tried to pick up my girlfriend. It was sad in so many ways. Not me, but my younger cousin, who must have been about 8 or 9ish at the time. He's a massive football fan, and while he and his dad were out one day they ran into George Best, who was lovely and chatted to him about football and signed his autograph and everything. I'm not sure exactly when this was, but it wasn't long before he died. And as they were leaving he looked my cousin straight in the eye and said, "Just make sure you don't waste your life like I did." I mean, it's nice that he wasn't a dickhead or anything, but that story still kills me a bit. Jonathan Banks, Mike Ehrmantraut from Breaking Bad, came into my bookstore and bought a sympathy card. Walked up to the counter and said in a voice just like Mike in the show, "I'm looking for a sympathy card." It's sad because he needed a sympathy card. Besides that, it was awesome. I'm convinced he does not act at all. Mikey is Jonathan Banks. I met T40, the Bay Area rapper, in a local high-end grocery store. Being a dumb 19-year-old, I approached him and asked him if he needed any weed. He looked me in the eyes and said, "No man. I'm an alcoholic." Jake the Snake Roberts asked me if I knew anybody who could get him some crack after a wrestling show I went to in my hometown. Keira Knightley and her +1 were at a bar theater TV studio I used to work at. My manager told me to take a bowl of olives outside to her table. My hands were shaking so hard. She's even more beautiful in real life. I tripped on the leg of the table before hers and landed right on my face. She was ridiculously nice about it. I was mortified. Two of my colleagues were on a break a few tables over and I never heard the end of it. Met Ty Pennington. The American man who does extreme makeover, home edition. Came to my hometown to rebuild our open-air pool for his TV show. The football club I played for at the time, 2009/2010, were allowed to play football with him for his show. It was pouring with rain. And he was wearing daps. And then he slipped and broke my leg in 3 places. He then paid for a trip to Disneyland, I was 9/10, and bought me an Xbox 360. I was able to interview Christy Mack. This was about a month before her ex-boyfriend and MMA fighter beat the shit out of her. She must be 110 pounds tops. Her agent and I were talking when she was signing autographs and he told me about how he wants her to get away from her boyfriend. He sure was right. And clearly knew something well before TMZ broke the story. There's a food court in the Charlotte airport where I didn't bother Elvis Costello. There he was. Unquestionably him, even if I hadn't recognized him. He had a bowling bag-shaped carry-on with the word Elvis on it. Everything about me wanted to go up and fanboy at him about how much I've meant to his music over the years and oh my god. And instead I said, you know what? No. We're all grown-ups here. Let the man eat his Quiznos in peace. So whenever I've flown through Charlotte since then and walked past that spot, I know to whoever I'm with that right over there is where I didn't bother Elvis Costello. Deleted. He looks like he would live under a bridge and ask people riddles so they could cross. Bam Margera. Hands down. It was actually the 3rd time I had met him. Don't get me wrong. He was actually a totally cool guy every time. The 3rd time was like 3 months after Ryan Dunn had died. It was at a bar in the WC. He was sitting at the bar by himself. 3 of us went up to him and said hi and just expressed regret for his loss. We asked him if we could buy him a drink. He said yes. Told us he had no idea what to do. Like no idea at all. After some backpats and some hang-and-theres we left him alone because he seemed to want to just be by himself. It was kind of heartbreaking. John Travolta hands down. I worked at a hotel overnight that he stayed at. He walked around with me and my supervisor all night trying to convince us to join a 2-year Scientology cruise around the world that we could work to pay for. He kept putting aluminum foil over the floor-to-ceiling windows which created so much haste in between the 2 windows. The outer one was basically storm-proof, that the outer window busted. Not once but twice and he paid for it. It was sad that a celebrity had nothing better to do than lock up in a room during the day and walk around with employees at night. For a summer job in 2001, I worked at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas as a security job. One night the park had a concert featuring Aaron Carter. The stadium was filled with preteens who screamed and attempted to rush the stage. Weak attempts. Came one at a time, no mass rush. Amateurs. After the show, the park as a courtesy stayed open and let Aaron ride whatever rides he wanted. Security had to make sure he was escorted around and safe from the empty park. Aaron was constantly eating a blue blow pop. His face was covered with blow sugary goop. He began behaving like the 13-year-old he was and his mother had to pull him aside and all but spank his butt. It was so awkward to watch a celebrity being reprimanded by his mom. This is my brother's story. So I'll tell it exactly how he told it to me. So this was my freshman year in college. Me and a few of my friends were hanging around. Real bored one night when we heard that Kel from Kenan and Kel was over at some bar near campus. A side note, my siblings and I were huge fans of Kenan and Kel. Watched the show nearly every day. So we headed over to this shitty bar. And looked around for Kel. I saw him drinking a beer over by the bar. So I ran over. Made awkward eye contact with him. And the child in me yelled, "Who loves orange soda?" Kel turned around real slowly from where he was sitting. Looked me in the eyes. And in a very disappointed voice said, "Fuck off. White bitch." Easily one of the worst nights of my life. My city has a fair number of large festivals during the summer, which tends to attract quite a few celebrities. There's kind of an unwritten rule: during winter, feel free to geek out. But during summer, if they're just walking around, let them enjoy themselves. Years ago, I'm walking downtown with some friends and we see this guy coming towards us. Baseball cap on. talking on a cell phone. Clearly trying to be inconspicuous. Most of us recognize him right away, and while we exchange glances with each other, we just keep going on our way. That is, until one of our group looks up and right away blurts out, extremely loud, "Holy shit, David Duchovny." He just kinda looked around, a bit startled, and kept walking. I was working on an upcoming Matthew McConaughey movie as a locations assistant. One of my various tasks were cleaning crew toilets. Film school totally paid off, guys. So I'm walking out of the unit I just cleaned. Gloves covered in everything unholy. And McConaughey walks off set to me. All I could get out was a grunt and a nod. He stopped in front of me, still fully in character, and just grunted and nodded back. Glad I didn't try to shake the guy's hand. Not too weird, I guess. But it made me think. Do actors who stay in character take a shit still in character? These will be the questions that haunt me. Saw Ben Stiller at the Troubadour. He walked up next to me and ordered a drink at the bar. I gave him my generic big fan and he was about to ask me something when one of my creep friends walked up behind us and said, "Beat it, Zoolander. I need to talk to him." He walked away with a look of disbelief. I could have had a nice conversation, but my idiot friend decided to be an asshole. I drove Julian Lennon, John Lennon's son, around my city for 2 days when he had that small hit song Salt Water back in the 90s. Just a never-ending stream of people wanting to talk about his dad and the Beatles. It was hell for me after 2 days, so I can't imagine living your whole life like that. Especially since his dad treated him like such crap and left him almost nothing in his will. Oliver Kahn, German goalkeeper. He's a legend and a personal idol of mine. I'm talking about posters on the walls when I was a kid. Desktop background. Watching his interviews. His training regime. I also trained and played as a goalie, etc. Anyway. Fast forward to last autumn when I was in Monaco for work and I'm walking the F1 track with a buddy of mine, and right next to the concert opera house I see him. With his young wife partner. Without even thinking. Like a teenager. I screeched out, "Ollie." He looked at me. Kept walking and didn't say a damn thing. Not even a nod. A little disappointed, but what was I expecting? A high five? Yes, obviously I was. Deleted. A few months ago, I was in getting off a plane at LAX. Headed for the bathroom. I passed a guy whose shoelace was untied. I politely said, "Excuse me. Your shoe is untied." I looked up to find, a taller in person, Norm Macdonald. His reply was, "Oh. Thanks," in a very Burt Reynolds-like voice. As I'm in the bathroom, I noticed Norm was in there as well. I looked down to see that he had untied his shoelace. It was dragging all of the bathroom floor. That was some sad ass shit. Worked in the music industry for a while at a casino venue. So many sad scenes and tail end of careers. To summarize a few. Diana Ross gets out of rehab. Shows up backstage 1.5 hours late. Forgets her song lyrics. Found naked in hotel elevator in middle of the night. Flies out and gets arrested when she landed in New Jersey for something unrelated. Dolly Parton needs a teleprompter. Kenny Chesney's crew opened the back of the transport and dumped a huge bin of all his fan mail in the garbage. The lead singer of Styx tried to do a running knee slide on our gripped stage. He face planted hard. Sheila E., Prince Springsteen, refused to take off her sunglasses and proceeded to step in a cable trough and sprain her ankle. She tried to blame the crew. Many more LOL. I used to work as a stagehand in NYC setting up concerns. Premiere parties. Commercials. etc. The premiere party for The Life Aquatic was a Roseland ballroom and I had worked maybe 14 hours and was filthy. Well. That night a very drunk Bill Murray was walking around with a large glass of scotch and a plastic shark. He walked right up to me and "Don't You Want Me Baby" was on the speakers playing. So naturally Bill Murray and I began singing together. It only lasted for about 30 seconds. It was the saddest moment of my life after that because I realized I had peaked in life and everything after that would be downhill. I saw Jon Stewart and his daughter while in a New Jersey music shop. He seemed really nice. But his daughter noticed me noticing him. I wasn't going to bother them. But she got embarrassed and quietly told her dad she wanted to leave. I felt pretty bad. I used to play Gears of War 2 with Hugh Jackman. Chatty dude, but he sucked. I met Big Bird once when I was like 3. You know what's scary when you're 3? A 7-foot fucking bird. That's what. I cried for several days. Met Boban, an awesome guy. Was awkward and shy but still super nice. Fast forward 2 years. Meet him again, but this time he's a self-centered dick who was being an ass to multiple fans. Maybe rough night. Maybe he got full of himself. Me and my dad saw Mitt Romney on the deck of his beach house in La Jolla while we were peeing on his lawn. We were scared he saw us, so we just ran. I met Billy Mays in Las Vegas shortly before his death. Maybe a month. He was just walking around the casino with photos of himself and a Sharpie asking if people wanted autographs. I don't think there was no real reason why he was there. He looked very drunk. Poor guy. He didn't appear happy. I was working as a concierge at a high-end resort in Park City, Utah. Justin Timberlake was staying with us for Sundance. And one of his entourage called the front desk and let us know their internet was being flaky. I was the go-to tech guy. So I ran up to his room and restarted the router for them. And I was hero of the night to everyone in the room. Literally. High fives and chest bumps. As I was riding the elevator down, I heard Timberlake in the garage, great acoustics, belting out one of his songs as he was waiting on the lift. The door opened. And we were standing face to face. And I said, "I dig your sound, man." He looked at me dismissively and said, "You should. I get paid for it." And walked past me like a schoolyard bully. Complete with shoulder bump. Robin Williams. A couple months before he died. He was very friendly. Exactly what you'd expect. Looking back on it. With how he passed. It's pretty surreal to think about. I met James O'Barr once at some comic book convention. We talked for a little bit about The Crow and he said he wished he never made it. He liked the first movie okay. But the later ones he absolutely hates. He wrote the graphic novel as a way to deal with the loss of his girlfriend. But it seemed like that never really worked. It was sad in a way that the man seemed very much haunted by his past. Deleted.